everyone, and welcome to Let's Just Do This. I'm Margaret Wallis-Duffy, and I'm alongside my handsome co-host, Mr. Todd Miller.
Welcome, and good to be back again.
It sure is. And today we are here in studio with an amazing guest that I cannot wait to share with you. Not only because it's somebody that I know and have the opportunity to link arms with professionally, but someone who really is bringing two different types of practices together that is making a massive difference. So let me take a minute to introduce Gabrielle Allison. Now, Gabe is a registered dietitian and a certified yoga instructor and a teacher of a program called I Am Hungry, Mindful Eating. Now, a couple of years ago, she discovered the parallels between two mindfulness-based practices, yoga and mindful eating. She's merging those two practices together in a powerful way to help people make peace with food and their body. Now, if that is not something that all of us need and can relate to, I don't know what is. Gabrielle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
You know, it really fires me up when I get to see a professional like you, a registered dietitian who has had years of experience in private practice, in clinics, in hospitals, with athletes. You've been an athlete yourself. To not only shift gears at a point in your career, but to amplify the knowledge you have and make it that much better for others because of the experience you've had. You've noticed and told me time and time again that the relationship with food is something that people struggle with. And as a dietitian, being just focused on food wasn't serving people. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about why this shift happened in terms of wanting to look at mindful eating, mm-hmm. and then we'll talk in a bit about the yoga piece.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I, over the course of many years, I've been a dietitian for almost 35 years now, so love the field of nutrition and loved helping people meet their goals, their health and nutrition-related goals. My motto always was slow, sustainable changes over time. Mm-hmm. That to me is, was a sustainability of behavior change. But what I was finding is, and I always try to draw in that mindful piece, the mindset of eating, but it wasn't enough, I found. People, we are so much more than what we eat, and we need to really take in the whole picture, the mental, the emotional, the social reasons why we eat, and we're meant to eat for all kinds of reasons. We don't just eat for fuel. But I find that, and this has been going on even since I started, or probably even before, that our culture, it's very diet obsessed. It's mm-hmm. food abundant. We're in a very food abundant culture as well, a very food abundant society, and very weight focused. And I think what that has done to people, or for people, is really disconnected them from tuning in to listening to their bodies and what they need. So we've become very reliant on the outside world to tell us how to eat. Mm. And as we all know, there's just so much out there and so much confusion and so many different sources of information that people, they get lost, I think. And this is what I have found. So people keep coming on and off, going back and forth on various types of diets, and kind of getting lost and losing that connection. So with the mindful piece, the mindfulness piece, but mindfulness-based practices are basically just to help us gain awareness of just helps us stop and gain awareness of mm-hmm. what we're thinking, what we're doing, and then what we can do to serve ourselves better. Mm. So with mindful eating, a good little nutshell definition would be eating with intention and attention. So the intention is to feel better and really more of a self-care kind of focus. The attention, we're placing attention on purpose and without judgment, which the judgment piece is a really powerful piece that you might have heard lately about how self-compassion is really the foundation to transformation, as opposed to the harsh grind of I have to do this, and look at me, I'm not good enough, and that kind of attitude. So what it does is it brings awareness allows us to become aware of our physical sensations. So that in this case, it would be hunger and fullness, and allows us to become aware of all the other non-physical drives that fuel our eating decisions. So it's our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, patterns that are all coming, from inside and outside. And then the environmental triggers, right? So it just allows us to pause and notice them without judgment, and then allow us to create choices so that we don't have to do things just because we think that we should. We bring in the decision based on what we feel serves us the best. So I use a program called it's actually Am I Hungry Mindful Eating programs, and I wove in the Am I Hungry Mindful Eating and yoga, which I was trained in recently over the past year, so that it brings in our awareness of our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and allows us then to make the choices, whatever that could be. So the other the piece of that is I can even show this mindful eating cycle that I use,
right,
which allows us to then look at why we eat, when we eat, what we eat, how, and then how much, and where we invest our energy in the whole process. So we're not looking only at what we're eating and even the how part. We're looking at the decisions that we make right from before we even eat all the way to what we're doing after we eat. So it's a whole cycle of decision points.
There's two things that really stood out for me there. You talked about informed choices and information, and there's so much misinformation out there about what constitutes nutrition, especially with commercials that are running, and they send little triggers to our body to say, oh yeah, I really need that triple burger right now. And it really isn't providing you with much in the way of nutrition. And you're talking about mindfulness, and there's so much mindlessness that goes on, where we sit down with a bag of Doritos and we eat the whole thing, so it doesn't provide us with anybody. It's just almost like it's like you're an automaton and you're just putting them in.
Yeah, so it's the autopilot thing that we work with. So it's really just exploring what are your triggers, what are your drivers, because a lot of people aren't aware of that. They're not even aware of their physical cues. And so that's the other thing, is that tuning into our physical cues. It's not to say that we should only eat when we're hungry, because we do eat for other reasons. It is if we're eating for all those other reasons solely, like if we're using food as a way to cope with emotions, stress, anger, whatever, then there's going to be a problem, right? That also disconnects us from knowing when are we actually really hungry and when are we full. Everything just kind of gets mishmashed, So the first step would be, tuning into the hunger fullness signals, because really food is the best way to meet. Food is our best way to meet the need for hunger, to physical hunger, whereas other ways of coping with emotions and all the other reasons we eat are best served by other ways. So this is a way also to notice how else can we deal with our emotions. When we may want that brownie or that ice cream, it might actually be meaning that I want some love, I want comfort, I want companionship.
This rings true. It brings me back to when my daughter Carly was just a little girl, a little toddler. And, as a massage therapist, body language cues is something, and body awareness is something I try to, in my practice every day, impart the importance of to the people that I have the honor of treating, because we don't listen to our body. I always say we live outside of our body, and we're not listening to the cues that our body is giving us. But what was really neat as a mother of a young little girl, she would, when she got extremely tired, she would mix up her cues, and she would say, I'm hungry, and be crying, I'm hungry. And I remember having conversations with my husband saying, actually, because it took me a while to clue into it, she's not hungry at all.
Yeah.
She's tired and needs comfort.
Yeah,
and food can provide that comfort. But that's so true. And it starts at such a young age, and the cultural influences. But I love that you're also balancing it with, as a dietitian, which I think is so powerful, that we're also meant to eat for all kinds of reasons.
Yeah, we're meant to
But
enjoy.
listening is so important. And
Yeah.
even as a little girl, she was mixing up her cues. That is so powerful.
Yeah, and I think every single one of us has that, right?
Yes.
I know, I recognize that in myself. But the point is you recognize it,
Right.
And that's your first step. Is just being aware, and it doesn't mean that what you're doing is wrong. That's
Right.
the other thing. Is that. Like in one of the tips that I'll give, there's a very powerful question that you can ask yourself. But it's not meant to say that, again, if you're not hungry, then I shouldn't eat.
Right.
So we don't
Right.
we don't turn mindful eating into another set of rules and another diet, because when that happens, you're just creating another
Problem,
diet, right?
yeah.
So if you're telling yourself, that's where the judgment piece comes in. If you're telling yourself, well, I'm not hungry, or I'm eating for emotional reasons, so I shouldn't, that's not the point of it. The point of it is just bringing that awareness in, and then still deciding that, no, I'm still going to have that brownie. It's okay,
Right.
because I want it right
Right.
now. And just dealing with the consequences, and knowing that if you may regret it after, then you may next time go, last time I regretted it because maybe I had too
that
much. Right? And
awareness.
it's because of the feeling you
Right.
might have eaten too much, and therefore you feel full. So you're focused on how it feels, and that's the intention is all about how is it serving me and how do I want to feel after I eat, as opposed to the whole should and shouldn't, because that's what's going to connect you to why you do what you do, right? Instead of listening to all the outside voices.
Absolutely. Well, so much to think about already. We're going to take a short break here in a second, and we're going to come back and talk about some actual tips and how we can actually put them into action in our day-to-day life when it comes to mindful eating, and even bringing yoga into that as one of the options for consideration. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Let's Just Do This. I'm Todd Miller, along with Margaret Wallis-Duffy, and our wonderful guest, Gabrielle Allison, who is a nutritionist.
Registered dietitian.
Registered dietitian, sorry. Thank you for
nutritionist.
correcting.
I'm
And
also
nutritionist.
nutritionist.
You are
Yeah.
too, but I want to make sure we got it all in.
Oh, absolutely. So you talked about, in our first segment, restrictions. You talked about deprivation and judgment. What's a great tip along those lines that you can share with our viewers and our listeners about letting go?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing I would recommend for anyone who's struggling with their relationship with food, anyone who's into the yo-yoing and the worries and the kind of using a lot of energy into thinking about what are they going to have, what they shouldn't have. The first thing is to try to ditch the mentality of restriction and deprivation, because that's a sure way to set up binging. If you have issues with overeating or even binging, that's what you need to stop doing. Because when we restrict and deprive ourselves, there's two things that happen. Basically, physiologically, we get hungry. If you keep stamping down your hunger cues, saying, no, I shouldn't eat because the diet told me not to, or because I put on weight, I can't eat. Eventually your body's going to scream back at you, right? And it's going to cause cravings. It's going to cause you to just go raid the fridge, the whole kitchen. And a lot of people think, oh my God, I have no willpower. What's wrong with me? And there's nothing wrong with you. That's a completely normal, natural survival reaction. So
Your body's telling you you need to eat.
Your body's telling you need to eat. So you get to the point, though, where you are no longer rational if you get to that stage, right? So you're setting yourself up by doing that. And then the other part is the psychological piece. So when we tell ourselves we can't have something, what do we want?
We want it more.
The most.
Yes.
So the whole, a lot of people get scared with that all foods fit mentality because they are worried then they're going to eat everything in sight.
Let's say that again. All foods fit mentality.
Yeah.
That is powerful, because I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It scares people.
Yeah,
right?
it's scary.
Yeah.
But this doesn't happen overnight. We are wired a certain way, and if you're scared of that concept, and we've been raised to believe that we can't eat this and this is
Shouldn't
good
eat
and
that.
this is bad, then
Right.
it's going to take time. But the first step is to try to get rid of that and to give yourself permission that everything's on the table, eventually, the more you practice this, and this, this is a practice, eventually, when you really take in that tuning into what you need and the whole self-care model, you will gravitate. You're not going to live off chips and ice cream all day long. Eventually, you get tired of it. So initially, you may kind of go, oh, right.
This is great.
This is great. Yeah. But it's not about that. It's not about the free-for-all. But again, not to judge yourself harshly if you start that way. And a great model with the Am I Hungry program that I love using, instead of the yo-yo, the extremes, the black and white thinking, think of a pendulum, the way the pendulum swings, and that the arc of the pendulum allows for sort of a softer, so in other words, you can still have the extreme swings,
Right.
which is okay, because some days you might want to have more than your body actually needs.
Right.
You might on a social occasion, and to give yourself permission to do that. And then you may swing the other way very temporarily, but the idea is to just soften the arc.
Yeah.
And eventually it does come the more you practice this
Great
process.
analogy.
Yeah, it's just it's a good way to look at it. It's not an extreme. There's this in between, gentle in between. Psychologically, when you allow the things that everything's okay, they lose its power as
Right,
well.
right.
So those forbidden foods
You're not as
lose the
enticed
power.
as often.
Yeah. So so that's the other point with the deprivation thing that kind of ties in. When you focus all your efforts on weight loss, that's the other thing people get trapped into, using mindful eating as a way to lose weight. And I'm not against losing weight per se, but when you use it as your focus, it distracts you from learning how to sense in and listen and trust your body wisdom.
Wow.
So, because if you step on a scale and nothing's happened, what are you going to listen to stronger?
You're focused on the number versus the
versus
nutrition.
what? So you may end up
And your
ignoring
body's
your
reaction.
hunger.
Exactly.
Yeah. You'll ignore your
Exactly.
hunger. You'll go back to your meal plan, and you won't trust the fact that the hunger means I need to eat.
Right.
Because sometimes you think that I need to lose weight, so I shouldn't be eating. So sometimes what happens is you end up eating all day long.
Right.
Because you don't give yourself the meal that you need.
Right.
Yeah.
So I love the program's called Am I Hungry?
Yeah,
Can you speak to the basis of why that question is asked? I mean, it really makes us stop and pause, doesn't it?
Yeah, so that's what it's used for. So when you kind of use it when you feel the urge to eat. So this is a great tip. Anytime you think in your mind, I want to eat, for whatever reason, whether you're hungry or not, just ask yourself the question, am I hungry? And just to let you, to make note that it's not to ask whether you are allowed to eat, it's just to bring awareness or just notice the fact that you want to eat. So it's just a pause, literally a pause button, for you to just stop and think, okay, what's going on here? Am I actually hungry? Or am I not hungry? And why do I want to eat? So again, no judgment. Doesn't matter why you want to eat. You're just noticing that you are that you are not hungry necessarily, that you just want to eat. So it just allows you to pause instead of the autopilot. So a good example is when we go to a movie theater, what's sort of our automatic thing?
gotta
To the
popcorn.
concession stand, yep.
The smell. So and that's just, and it's not to say there's anything wrong with that, right? So, but it just allows you to go, okay, am I hungry? I'm smelling the popcorn. Normally I would go right to the concession stand. I'm going to have it. But you might want to ask yourself the question, because maybe you don't really want it. We're reacting to the way we're wired, and we can rewire it. So this empowers us to make a choice by pausing and tuning in. So the other piece of that is the way we tune in, and this is where the yoga piece comes in. So Rima did a beautiful job explaining
Dr.
what.
Thapar was on our show. If you haven't seen that episode, you want to listen because
definitely, and that's why I tied in the yoga. For me, was the missing piece to this whole process. Mindful eating is the process in itself. We consciously change our thoughts, because our thoughts lead to feelings and actions. We can change that, but when you bring in a physical practice where movement and breath creates awareness of all your layers, so that energetic layer, the mental, the emotional, clears out the clutter, and then you get to that inner wisdom piece. And that's where that whole listening to your body piece comes in. So you can do this as simple as like a mind, body, heart scan. This can literally, you can be in a lineup and just pause, take a few deep breaths, feel what's in your body, think of what you're thinking about, feel into your emotions, and where we carry our emotions in our body. And just then you can pause and make a decision from there.
You're trying to override the senses, because when you get in there, you smell the butter and you're going, wait a second, it's autopilot, like you said.
Yeah.
Well,
so and you still can choose to eat it, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's not about saying
But
no.
you're asking the question. There's
Yeah.
been a request to eat.
Just
Do
a
we need to
question.
eat?
So it's a new trigger.
Yeah.
When I want to eat is your new trigger to ask the question, and then you have
Make
this
a
little
decision.
layout to decide. And you can use your body, the breath, so powerful. And then, movement, if you do yoga, you're not going to necessarily do yoga in a lineup, right? But as a practice, yoga practice. So taking the philosophies of yoga and the benefits and the state change that we create through movement and breath to allow, it's like a whole orchestra of our body and our mind and our emotions and our energetic layer. And
What I love about what we're talking about, and you know how much we love to collaborate with all disciplines in conventional and complementary medicine. But most importantly, what we're talking about here is the person, and giving them the opportunity to actually go inward and be aware of what is happening in their body. In the world that we live in, such busy lives, so many people, and whether you're, a massage therapist, a dietitian, a family doctor, a chiropractor, whoever, a counselor, it's interesting the crossover that all of us have in the disciplines in which we work, and the commonality. And if we just taught people to listen to their body, it builds their confidence to make choices and actions moving forward that will change their health.
And to trust that
to trust
voice.
it. Yes. I just loved what you're saying there. It's just such an important piece. We want to hear more in terms of tips and where they can get help and support, which I know that you can do. When you notice you want to eat, and you said to pause and ask the question, am I hungry, which is so beautifully talked about. But what about, eat like you love it? Like, what about that? What about the fact I love to eat, I love to cook, and I love, more importantly, the social, and you've talked about this already in our episode, the social interactions that I have around food. What about that, Gabrielle?
Yeah, so that... people always, a lot of people say that, I love to eat, and that's why I can't stop. So, sometimes, that's a whole other topic. But yes, when we talk about saying you love to eat, then show it. Eat like you love, like you're loving that food, right? So this brings in the why part, the how part of eating. And the what, because you're also choosing something you love. It's important to eat what you love. And you will notice as you continue on with this practice that you do love all the healthy foods too. Like, they're good, they're delicious, but it's okay to love your whatever it is, the donut, the cake, the ice cream. So all of it's okay. But it's the how part. So this is where we bring in all our senses. So we bring in the sight. So creating, attractive dishes, creating an environment for eating that's pleasant and conducive, sitting down and where you're not distracted with the TV or just standing at the countertop over top of that. And then bringing in the sense of smell, and then slowing down, just savoring.
Yes.
And then tasting the food. And, our taste buds are on our tongue, not at the sides of our mouth and the roof of the mouth. So take small bites and just savor the flavors and notice the textures, and even noticing when we're trying to decide what to eat. What do you feel like in terms of texture and flavor? And so taking all of that in, and then pausing, slowing down is going to also likely make you're not going to eat as much, because you're going to give the chance for your brain to connect and realize
to listen
it's
to
full.
your body.
Yeah, and to really, just so good. Another good tip is to pause halfway through your meal. And that's assuming you're paying attention, right?
Well,
pause halfway through. You can even create a physical divide in your plate. Pause and just check in. just check in. Am I still hungry? Do I want
The
more?
portion sizes are massive.
Yeah. And you can still, again, it's not to say I'm not allowed to have that other half. It's just to ask yourself, if I do, I might feel a little full, but you know what? Maybe that's okay today, or maybe that isn't. Last time, and there's that whole piece between regret and guilt. So regret just means learning, moving on. It's the guilt piece that can keep the cycle, that negative cycle fueling. So just, yeah.
It's amazing. We have a great guest on our show, how quickly time goes.
Yeah.
And we are already coming to the end of yet another great episode here on Let's Just Do This. I've learned so much, and simple but practical and powerful tools to really reframe our relationship with food and the way we look at our bodies and the way we interact with it. Gabrielle, thank you so much. Before we go, though, I want all of our listeners and viewers to know how they can connect with you and be able to take your program, because you actually do this mindful eating and
I'm
yoga
starting
practice.
one tomorrow.
Fantastic. And for those of you who are listening on demand, how can we reach you and how can people get more information?
Probably the best way is with my email, which is g.nutritionrd, all lowercase, @gmail.com.
Fantastic. And of course, if you've got questions about nutrition or mindful eating and mindful practice like yoga and combining those things, we've got some of the best guests here on Let's Just Do This. Reach out to us. We will connect you with Gabrielle, and we will look forward to bringing her again here on the show.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So ask yourself today, am I hungry? Take the opportunity to pause, to listen to your body, to honor it without judgment, because at the end of the day, that will serve you and your health very, very well. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Until next time, we will see you back here at your TV, and Let's Just Do This. Stay well.